Welcome back to another episode of Podcast Weekly, where I'm here with my co-host Calvin Pace. We're here this week. We're going to got some interesting stuff coming at you. We're going to talk about our game of the week, stat of the week. We're going to talk about what coaches are on the hot seat, plus much more. So, Pace, let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to start off talking about our game of the week. Who did you have? What was your game of the week this week?
I did the Texans and Bears, and a part of it was just to see Caleb, see how he was going to do against a. After watching them, the Houston Texans, which is probably the most talented roster in the NFL, probably the honestly, man, just probably the most up and coming franchise, just in terms of when I'm speaking about Houston. You're talking about a team that was able to, let's call it what it is, pimp Houston out of a number of draft picks, and they've all hit. They're all doing extremely well, and they're all young. So, it's not costing you a lot in the cap. So, Houston was able to re-up a good young receiver in Nico Collins, who, watching his game on Sunday night, man, he needs to be a household name. Everybody knows Stephon Diggs. They got him in the offseason. They added one of the top premier pass rushers in Danielle Hunter. He had 16 sacks last year with Minnesota. Had one against Houston. Um, and I really was watching the game more so for Caleb and CJ Stroud. I wanted to see CJ on prime time, and he showed me everything that I thought he was going to show: poise, accuracy. Uh, he calls the shots when he's out there, everybody's following. He's a true leader, and it's remarkable in the guy for his second year. The flip of that was Caleb, man. This dude was pressured 82% of the game. On out of 44 passes, he was pressured on 36 of the passes, sacked 7 times. They was running him down, and I think the most glaring thing that was on display was just kind of like what you did in college doesn't match up to what you can do in the NFL. And what I mean by that is, some guys, you have a Josh Allen, who I don't think was nearly as polished as he is now, but he was still able to do some things with his feet, his athleticism, and kind of keep plays going and get out in the open field. But he's 6'5", and him and Caleb might run the same speed. One might be faster or slower, by tenths of a second here or there, but you're talking about 6'5" coming at you, 6'5", probably 230, 240 versus 6'1", 6'2", 210, and it just looks different for a defender. And I think his accuracy wasn't, where it needed to be. And I heard an interesting piece of information given by, I think it was Chris Collins, talking about his timing. So in the NFL, we were taught when I was in the NFL, 2.5, you have 2.5 seconds to get to a quarterback. They're going to get the ball out their hands, on average, 2.5 seconds. That number probably is a little bit lower now. You're probably talking closer to 2.4, high 2.4s. And so Chris Collins was kind of getting into like he's holding it 3.5, 3.6. And you just don't have that type of time. And the second part of that is his offensive line is just not where it needs to be. 3 out of the 5 offensive linemen rank near the bottom in on Pro Football Focus, which grades players weekly. 3 of the 5 are ranked towards the bottom, and the other 2 are in the 60s. When I say ranked towards the bottom, they're in the 40s in terms of percentage and how they're grading out, which doesn't speak. That's not positive information for a rookie quarterback whose game is built on extending plays and kind of off schedule plays. And then the second part of that, man, it's just the play calling. I thought, man, I think Caleb would have been better suited if the running game would have got going better. Schematically, I think the run game needs to be more perimeter oriented. I love the running back they have, DeAndre Swift. They added him in the offseason. Shifty guy, great in the open field, good out of the backfield. So to me, that speaks perimeter runs, zone blocking schemes, where they're a little bit more gap based. And then I think just the scheme in general, man, I think it should have just been played on the perimeter in general. I think it should have been some screens, whether that's, quick screens to the running back, whether that's, wide receiver screens. Do some stuff to kind of get Caleb in rhythm, get some good easy throws, some stuff that can kind of open it up for him where he can see things clear. but they couldn't get the run game going. They were around 1.7 per carry. Surprisingly, though, the Bears defenses, I think they're legit. They actually held C.J. Stroud pretty much all day. Did amazing in the red zone. Got in some bad situations and held them to field goals. And I think, I've been in that situation where you're fighting, you're giving everything you got. I think, nobody wants moral victories in the NFL, but the Bears defense is a bright spot. But in saying that, I don't know how long they can hold up, because you're playing with a rookie quarterback who's going to make mistakes. Your running game's not going, so you're going to be on the field a lot. And they're just not able to really utilize some of the weapons that they spent money on in the offseason. They got DJ Moore, who they traded for from Carolina a couple years ago. He's top 15 receiver, but he just can't get the ball. He can't get it in rhythm. Keenan Allen's hurt right now. And the ninth pick in the draft, Rome Odunze, is kind of banged up right now. So essentially, you're counting on one guy, and they got a legit tight end too in Cole Kmet. Not able to do anything with him. So the quarterback play is, I'm not gonna say it's killing them. I'm not down on Caleb in the space that I don't think he's the guy. But I think that the coordinators and the scheme has to be better for him. I think they got to put him in better situations to just be able to kind of get in rhythm early, get him some confidence, because it's a confidence position. If he out there getting his ass knocked off and he's not able to kind of get his teammates involved, man, it's all of it's going to be pointing back to him. So for me, I think they got to find a way to change some things up, whether that's tempo, speed the tempo up a little bit, whether it's formation, personnel based, they got to find a way to get in rhythm to give a guy a chance, because they spent too much money in the offseason. And, I think playoffs, people have been talking playoffs, and if they get off to too bad of a start, I think that's just not going to happen. But even in saying all that, the game was close. I mean, it was a good game. They had a chance. It's just, Caleb's got to get better. The offensive line has to get tremendously better, and they got to find a run game. They got to find something. I'm not saying you got to be top 10, but you got to be middle of the pack to get this guy a chance.
When I just want to add a couple of points to that game, I think it's going to be difficult for the Bears because you mentioned two things that are a totally bad combination when trying to have a successful season. That is too much pressure on the quarterback and having a rookie quarterback. When you don't have a line built to give that quarterback time, his decision making is going to take a little bit longer. He's going to need another second to another second and a half, especially early on in the season. Think about it. This time last year, he was at USC, and now you're staring down the barrel of a much bigger gun, and the bullets coming faster. So he's got to process this. And to your point, what is open in college is not open in the NFL. So I think it's going to take some time. And yeah, they invested heavily in him, and they've got some players banged up. But until that O-line can give him more time, and you brought up an interesting stat in that conversation, he was pressured 80+% time on the field. That's hard to overcome for even a veteran quarterback that is familiar with the offense. So what I took away from that game was Caleb is one of those quarterbacks where are the Bears really invested in him and his development, and sometimes you just got to quit looking for that needle in a haystack at quarterback thinking you're going to get that rookie greatness. It rarely happens, and we're going to dive into that here in a little bit in our second quarter when we talk about the quarterback play in the NFL. My game of the week was the Saints and the Cowboys. The Saints walked away with a 44-19 victory. The game was really over at halftime. And just some interesting stats that really jumped out to me was the first 6 possessions, the Saints walked down and got touchdowns. So to me, when I look at stats, man, I try to find those key stats. But when you give up touchdowns on your first 6 possessions, I don't care if you're playing Pop Warner or if you are an NFL team, mentally you're done. There's no need for the second half. You're already done. They were averaging 12 yards a play in the first half, and they gave up. I think they gave up a total of 430 yards, 190 on the ground. you mentioned it, they only threw the ball 16 times. So when you're in the NFL, in a passing league, in a scoring league, in an offense-driven league, and you only have to throw the ball 16 times, and to me, the Cowboys got exposed early in the season. And for a defense that has a few veterans, and you've got some guys, Michael Parsons, I think he has a contract year, and you're giving up points like this, not taking anything away from the Saints, but when you're giving up points like that, when you're giving up, and it's not even just the points, but when you're giving up 6 straight possessions.
Smitty, I'm tell you, man. I'm gonna tell you what we could call that, man. Straight off the bus. You got your ass straight off the bus. When you got off the bus, they start scoring on you. But I tell you what's, even in looking into that game, that was really disheartening. For whatever reason, Dak Prescott is a lightning rod of criticism. He really is. And I think it's just part of it plays into, you see certain things and you already like, well, that's the quarterback's fault. What did the quarterback do wrong? Surprisingly, Dak didn't have a bad game. He threw 2 interceptions. Yeah. One of them wasn't his fault. One of them was an overthrow, right? So I think the bigger problem for the Cowboys is what they're built on, what you know them for. Was Tony Dorsett? At one point, it was Herschel Walker,
Emmitt Smith.
The running game, and when I speak to the running game, you're talking Rico Dowdell and Ezekiel Elliott, who's on the other side of being young in his career, right? He's towards the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
They build him as more of a short yardage back. They both have the same amount of yards at 56 yards. Zeke has one more carry than him. Both of them, neither of them offering you enough, right? Jerry Jones in the offseason had a chance to get Derrick Henry. He chose to stand put, right? Even with Mike McCarthy, everybody's assuming that this is his last year. You let Dan Quinn walk to go be the head coach of the Commanders because you felt like he was too loosey-goosey with the players. I played for Dan. Dan's an amazing human being. One of the best guys ever in football, man. And he went for Mike Zimmer, who used to be the head coach at Minnesota. At one point was the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys. But you only signed him to a 1-year deal, which is kind of unheard of for coordinators. So to me, for the Cowboys, Jerry doesn't seem really truly vested in this season. You've had to let some players go. The offensive line isn't a strength of your team as it used to be. You got some young players trying to mature on the job. I understand that. But the Cowboys have always been known for running the ball. And if you can't do that, I know this game was an aberration because you didn't have a chance. You got your ass kicked as soon as you got off the bus. So the running game is in the trash can, right? But outside of CeeDee Lamb with one big play at 65 yards, man, the Cowboys' passing game was shut down by Paulson Adebo, who's not a household name, and a backup, Alontae Taylor, was shut down. They gave up one big play. So your passing game is nullified, and it seems to me that outside of CeeDee Lamb, you don't have a guy to take some pressure off CeeDee Lamb. So to me, I mean, here's the problems are always going to be until they either raise the salary cap or they put a cap on quarterback numbers. Once you pay Dak, once you have to build the money up to get the Dak, and then you decide I'm not going to do anything in the offseason, as a fan, you should pretty much see what this season is pointing towards. Management has told you, hey man, if we can get it done, cool, but if not, cool too. That's essentially what the Cowboys are looking at, because you don't have a guy at running back. You got one receiver who's anybody's going to be paying attention to, and your offensive line isn't the strength that it used to be. Like I said, Cowboys have always been known for offensive line play and running back play. Always, So you lost Tyron Smith for free agency. Essentially, you hang your hat on Zach Martin at guard. He's a perennial Pro Bowler, probably Hall of Famer at some point. I don't know what you can expect if you're Jerry Jones. His motto seemed to kind of be like, we're gonna stand put and the players got to play better. That's fine. But you didn't go that far last year. It'd be different if we were talking about if you were in the 49ers position. Hey man, we got to the championship game. I think we good. That's different than saying, no, you got your ass kicked in the second round. You need to get better.
Well, Pace, I can tell you what they can expect. I think they can expect a tough season. The next 5 games are against Baltimore, who needs a win, the Giants, the Steelers, who are undefeated, the Lions, and the 49ers. So within that, I could see maybe 2 losses, maybe 3, but what they have to do now is figure out a way to bring some balance.
Smitty, let
You,
me say this, man.
go ahead.
You gave up 44 points on 56 plays. I'm going to give you some more in-depth numbers. 24 of the plays went for 7 yards or more, which is 43% of the time. 56 plays, 44 yards. And they didn't score nothing on special teams. So,
Yeah.
and then at a certain point, Saints just start running the ball. Alvin Kamara had 5.8 a rush. The backup Jamal Williams had 4.9. Even Derek Carr had 4.3 a carry. He don't run. Derek Carr don't run. I got some more stats, man. And like I said, Dak was actually solid, man. They just, bro, Rico Dowdell and Zeke Elliott have combined 112 yards rushing. There's 24 players in the NFL who have more yards rushing than that, and 3 of those players are quarterbacks.
This might be a throwaway season for the Cowboys. I mean, you paid Dak, you got Parsons coming up, but this may be a throwaway season. I don't see how they can, with this inconsistency, after the way they played against the Browns, then to follow up this week. And I think this is going to be a game that haunts them later on in the season when it becomes tough and you trying to make that late run, that late push for the playoffs. And that the NFC East, I'm not going to say it's up for grabs. The Eagles play pretty decently, but the Cowboys are in an interesting spot right now because not only when you look at the points that the defense gave up, but your offense wasn't able to answer that shit at all. So they really struggled, and then you know how it goes when your offense is putting you right back out there on the field. While Dak, he didn't throw 4 interceptions, but if you're not getting first downs, if you're not giving your defense a chance to rest, and you see obviously where the Saints offense has your defense's number, and you're not able to spread the ball around, take some time off the clock, at least slow the game down somehow, then you're going to have some problems. So it just seems to me that it was just a day where the entire organization was just off. Everybody was off. I'm wondering if they even got their pregame meal that day.
And I'll say this, and I'm not as down as you are about this might haunt them, but what I will speak to is I think it exposed some real deficiencies. And just
For
like I
sure.
know in football, if they expose one thing one week, oh man, until you fix it, they're gonna be running that shit every week. Just different variations of it.
Yeah.
And
And they're playing a desperate Ravens team that they need to win. The Ravens need to win. So and you facing another horse in the running back.
The other point to that is we're talking about a Saints team that nobody's thought anything about. Not kudos to the Saints, kudos to management and coaches, players, all that. They're doing whatever they had, planned in their building, and they're executing, and much respect in that space. But you ain't heard nobody talking about the Saints. You ain't heard nobody say one positive thing about the Saints coming into this season. So that's glaring. That is glaring. And outside of Derek Carr, they got a good young receiver in Chris Olave. Alvin Kamara is a Pro Bowl running back. I mean, you're not looking at that roster offensively and saying, "Oh man, here come the Saints, man." Oh man, hey,
You're right.
You're not saying that. So I think even looking at some of their numbers and just reading some articles, it looked like they're really struggling in the interior of the defense, and that was kind of what people were speaking to, what they needed in the offseason, and Jerry didn't address it. And so again, you spoke to the Ravens. Hey man, the Ravens coming downhill.
Yeah.
They coming.
And they're coming with a purpose now more than at any point early in the season. They need a win.
The bad part for the Cowboys, we're not even talking about you got to just stop just Derrick Henry. Now you got to stop Lamar too. And hey, look, man, he really don't even want to run. But let's just say he like, all right, man, we got to get a win. I'm about to go get it in. It's gonna be a problem for them.
That's what I'm saying.
Read off the rest of that schedule. Go ahead and run through them names again.
So we got the Ravens, got the Giants coming up,
That's
Got
what
the
we got.
Got the Steelers who are undefeated.
They coming downhill.
Got the Lions
Downhill.
and the four.
You know what that is. McCaffrey might be back then.
Yeah, it doesn't. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't. That's what I'm saying. They could be the team that they have already looked at their schedule, looked at their team. That's why I said this year might just be a wash for them. It doesn't mean that they're going to not win. They've already got the win against Cleveland, but when you look at that, they could be rolling in with only. They could be.
You got to play Philly 2 times. You know.
And again, Philly with that loss to the Falcons. And, you know, when you're playing against a team, I'm going to watch. Let me back up. I can't wait to see this Cowboys-Ravens game because you're going to see two desperate teams that need a win for sure, even if it's for nothing but to try to salvage their season. The team that loses that game between the Ravens and the Cowboys may really have already thrown it in for the season. I understand they got a long stretch, but when you're talking about the mentality of that team and keeping it together, I think this may be – I'm going to have to call this the desperation game because both teams are desperate for a win any way that they can. And I think the Ravens are going to sit back and lean on their stars. You're going to see a lot of Lamar Jackson running. As you mentioned, you're going to see a lot of downhill runs. And you're going to see that defense really clamp down and give Dak some problems because they're playing desperate now, man. This is not it's not as if the Ravens are coming in with one win or undefeated. They have to get this one, or this may be a problem for their team because they're not playing just to barely get to the playoffs. And they're also playing in one of the toughest divisions in the NFL in that AFC North, where, I'm going to say it again, the Steelers sit at the top of the division. But anyway, that's not important. The point is the Ravens need this win. And that's a good question. Who's going to need that win most, the Ravens or the Cowboys?
But I'll tell you this, man, even speaking to the Ravens, man, the world knows who the Ravens' kryptonite is. And it's a young man named Patrick Mahomes.
Yep.
And they don't want to have to see him in the playoffs. Now, they've already started off 0-2. And as just look at the league, man, injuries are a thing. A bunch of guys are down, big names who matter. Even with Chiefs, they lost the running back Pacheco to a fibula injury, 6 to 8 weeks. Hollywood Brown's out for the season. God forbid anybody else gets hurt, but injuries it's going to happen, So, I'm still going to be a believer in the Ravens just because I think their culture and what they've been built on, I think they much like the Steelers, man. It's about winning. It's about team, and nothing else matters. You know what I'm saying? The Cowboys, I think they're more liable to crumble, and I just think it's a lot of, playing there is just pressure, man. I mean, you got the ultimate front man and Jared who gonna hype you every year, and even speaking as a player, man, you really don't want that, man. You don't. Your job is hard enough, man. It really is. You got a lot of pressures in your life. To your family, to your team, to yourself, your personal goals. Last thing you need is a guy out front like, yeah, man, we're going undefeated this year. You in practice like, no, the hell we ain't. What the hell he looking at? You know what I'm saying? But even with that, I think, if you just, like I said, I understand that, I can't speak to absolute, confidence in terms of their cap numbers and how money comes and goes and what they need to do. Obviously, they need to get CeeDee Lamb shored up. They did that. They had to get Dak right. They did that. Micah's up next year. They don't have to do that eventually. So you got to get money from somewhere. And so it's kind of addition by subtraction, right? But even to say that, man, there's still always good veterans out there who aren't super, super high dollar players. You can catch them at discounts. And then you're playing in Texas, you're playing for the Cowboys, man. The crazy part about it is there are a lot of people, a lot of guys who want to play for the Cowboys. You got a lot of players from Texas. There's no state tax, right? You play for the Cowboys, you get treated like, that's Cowboys, Steelers. There's certain places you go, you treated like royalty.
And I'm not saying it's not real, but when you got to start selling players on no state tax, you got some problems. You got some problems. I'm not saying it's not real. I'm just saying
it's a real perk. It's a real perk.
I'm pretty sure, but I'm saying when that becomes a part of your selling, you're at a point where you're really trying to pull something together. But let's jump into the second quarter, and we've kind of touched on the quarterback play, particularly looking at some of these rookies and second-year quarterbacks. You and I were having a conversation. We've talked about quarterback play a couple of times on the show, and it was something interesting. I think I shared it with you on Instagram, or you shared it with me, but it was Tom Brady talking about the young quarterbacks again are basically playing too early, and I agree. And when you look at their development, these organizations are putting a lot of money into talent that hasn't even developed yet. And Patrick Mahomes played one game his rookie year. Tom Brady played because of injury. Peyton Manning was thrown to the wolves, and he broke the record for most interceptions during the season. So what happened, and I know you got your perspective on things, but what happened to the days of picking that quarterback first round, and when it meant being for the future, it meant letting the quarterback develop? A lot of organizations, a lot of owners and general managers are picking these quarterbacks in the first and second round and throwing them out there to the wolves with high expectations of producing right now, and we're just not seeing it. You have, for example, you got the Panthers. I looked at this for Bryce Young. They gave up a 2023 first round and second round pick, 2024 first round pick, and a 2025 second round pick. Plus, they traded some players, all for a young, unproven quarterback.
Yeah.
And then you throw him to the wolves with no offensive line. No disrespect to the offensive lineman, but he doesn't have a star to throw to. They don't have a running game,
It's
and
disrespectful to him. It's
so
very,
how? And now he's gotten benched. So
yeah.
how do you develop a young quarterback when you're putting him in those situations where he doesn't have stars around him? But however, you go to Houston. Look at what they surrounded their quarterback with. And even when Mahomes came in with the Chiefs, look at what he was surrounded with. It's important that you surround your quarterback, whether they're a veteran or rookie, with good players in order so they can develop.
So to that point, I'm a firm believer in. I don't blame the player because everywhere Bryce Young's been, he's been a winner. He won at
Yeah.
Monterey High School in California. He won at Alabama on the highest stage with the best coach, toughest division. He did it there. So there was nothing for me to believe that he didn't have the makeup to be a top quarterback. Everything speaks to that. We've seen other players do that. We saw Deshaun Watson in college, right? You at Clemson, you do your thing, you break records, you take the program to another level. You lose to Saban your sophomore or junior year, you come back, you beat him. That's, to me, that speaks to a high value pick, a high pick, right? I have a problem with the coordinators, and I have a problem with organizations not doing thorough analysis of their coaching staffs, right? You spoke to Patrick Mahomes. Andy Reid's a top 5 play caller in this league. I say top 3, right? There's a reason why Brock Purdy's able to survive and be able to do things as the last pick in the NFL draft out of Iowa State. Mr. Irrelevant. Don't get me wrong, he's got a plethora of talent around there. But you also got one of the top play callers, one of the top play designers, right? And so to me, like, you read articles like we were talking football first week about it was Texas A&M and Duke. So I was just doing some research on Texas A&M. Their offensive coordinator, Colin Klein, was a former Heisman candidate at Kansas State. He really was he was a quarterback power type guy. He ran a lot of quarterback runs. He wasn't a great passer. Had a chance in the NFL, but it didn't really pan out for him. But I read something that was it spoke to me because he was like, man, I base my plays on what my quarterback can do, on his strengths as a player. So if he's a runner, I'm gonna give him some things to highlight that, and I'm gonna marry the passing game off of that, right? And so, as a quarterback, and just being around them, your offensive coordinator and your quarterback coach are the two of the most pivotal coaches for them, right? The quarterback coach is gonna give them the fundamentals. He's gonna give them some little tidbits here and there. He's gonna be the prep guy. The offensive coordinator, that's the king for him. That's the play designer. Let's say, hey, what do you like? You know, what's your relationship? You know, trying to figure out what's his relationship with different players. You might have a number one receiver, but his best relationship might be with his slot receiver and tight end. He feels most comfortable with them. So you design plays in that space, right? But it's all got to marry up. Your run game and your pass game has to marry up. Like, you know, there's a reason why Sean McVay can always be in the playoff hunt. You know why? Because his plays speak to what his personnel are. Man, you got a 4-6 receiver. Cooper Kupp runs a 4-6, and he always leads the league in receptions. He's always getting it done. Why? Because I'm going to give him routes that he can run. I'm going to give him plays that marry up to what he can do well. And so when you're speaking about Bryce Young, man, when I tell you I hate seeing that, man, because Bryce Young didn't ask to go to the Carolina Panthers. Now you haven't seen one article where this man said, I want to go be the number one pick and lead the Panthers to relevance. He never said that. They drafted him. And so he got drafted into turmoil. He got drafted into an owner that nobody likes. He got drafted into a coach in Frank Wright they didn't believe in. Right? And so your roster's trash. Let's call it what it is. Your roster's trash. You got a bunch of young, unproven players. You got some veterans you can spend some money on. You traded away a bunch of talent and you didn't get anything for it. And you're asking him to save you. And he's not the biggest guy in the world. So, you know, you're watching him play and he's running for his life and he's doing things that he didn't normally do. Man is scared. Like, imagine, you know, somebody like, man, you the best athlete on the street, and somebody said, cool, man, come on by the house, man, come in the backyard, right? And I let all my pit bulls just go. That's what Bryce Young go. I got 8 pit bulls, I just let them roll go. That's what Bryce Young going through right now. And
but Pace, you said this, that quarterback is a position of confidence. And when you look at what Tua said about his experience with Flores, and basically he took this man's confidence. And that's what I'm saying is the NFL, while it's a quarterback-driven league, it's a passing league, they're not doing enough to allow time to develop.
I'm going to give you a prime example of who you know can coach and who you know can't coach. They threw Baker Mayfield to the Wolves.
Yeah.
They threw his ass away like he was a piece of trash. And I believed it because I'm like, you know, shit, I'm not in the building, you know, I'm not in the meetings, I'm not going through practice with him, so I'm just seeing the end results. I'm like, damn, dog, you just gonna throw that interception right to him? What happens to Baker? He goes to Carolina, goes somewhere, he ends up with Sean McVay for a little bit, right? And so same thing happened to Sam Darnold. I saw Sam Darnold in training camp when I was doing some internal work for the Jets. Man, Sam Darnold can do it all, and he's a pretty damn good athlete. You get up on him, he can move, he can make every throw. It was not Sam Darnold. It was Adam Gase. Same thing with Baker Mayfield. It wasn't Baker Mayfield. It was where he was at. So what happens to Sam Darnold? He was a backup last year in San Fran. All right, let me go learn. Let me go learn how to play quarterback. I don't want to play. Let me just learn.
Yeah.
Where's Sam Darnold at right now in Minnesota? They 2-0. Where's Baker Mayfield at in Tampa? 2-0. Right? Everything for the quarterback is coaching, what you have around you, and it's like, look, here are my tools. Help me. Here are my tools. Help me. Help me to refine these. Help me to be able to go out here and put these on display so I can make everybody around me better. Right? I mean, you even from our experience, you don't coach a quarterback like you coach everybody else.
That's true.
Quarterbacks do dumb shit, and you can't just yell at them. You can't motherfucker.
That's true.
You just can't. You know, you put them to the side. Hey, Captain, you can't do that, man. Come on now, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with that. I don't, because the last thing I want is a guy to be berated in front of everybody. And he knows he made a bad play. And we all make bad plays, but now everybody's looking at him crazy. You know what I'm saying? I understand all of that. But that position you got to nurture different, man. The quarterbacks and kickers, you can't coach them the same way. Everybody else you can dog cuss, and they're gonna keep it moving. But you say the wrong thing to a quarterback because he's already getting killed in the media. He's already getting some clown at the grocery store got something to say. He's, you know, he know. They know exactly what's going on.
I'm gonna give you an example of somebody I think that's in that situation is Daniel Jones with the Giants. So you bring in this guy. and he's come from a smaller media market like Duke, and then you throw him in New York, and you take away his running game, and you don't have a premier wide receiver, or you don't even have a tier 2 receiver. Your best receiver is probably the rookie that's coming out, and when you're in that New York market, now he has that pressure, and they're looking at the ghost of Eli Manning, and yet to me, I think he could flourish if he had a different coordinator, maybe a different coach that could help put him in a better situation. But when you're telling a young quarterback to save this team, or can you keep it together until we make better decisions in the offseason, that's a lot when they haven't figured out so many other things. And I think that he's getting thrown under the bus for a lot of the mistakes that really are coming from the coaching errors, and not bringing in solid coordinators and quarterbacks coaches that can really work with him. And I'll tell you an example, man, of Peyton Manning did an interview, and he talked about his rookie year at Indianapolis. And our former coach, Jim Caldwell, was coaching Peyton, and just something minor like, get Peyton from under that center so much. He's not quick enough at that time as a rookie to get out from under that center, make reads, do all those things, and be his best. They put him in the shotgun, and look at the difference it has made in his career. But again, to your point, you have to, with quarterbacks, you have to invest in coordinators and that quarterback's coach. You can't slack off on that. And that's why if you're gonna bring in a rookie quarterback, you cannot put the franchise on his back. You really have to start understanding that your quarterback, more than any other position, is going to need time to really develop and build that relationship with the coordinator. So to me, I think that the quarterback play is not. I don't think the quarterback play is diminished. I think that the quarterback play has gotten better. I just think that the decisions that the organization has made in terms of whether they are the right pieces around the quarterback for them to have long-term success, I don't think that that's there. I think that is missing.
So here's the thing, too. To actually get it right, you have to have a thorough analysis of where you are as a franchise. Case in point, the New England Patriots, right? They very easily could have tried to Drake May out there, stink it up, you know.
He did in the preseason, but go
in
ahead.
The preseason, right? But they were looking at it like from the top down in a realistic view, right? The Jets have a better roster. Everybody in the conference has a better roster right now. And the Patriots actually been playing pretty good ball.
Yep.
Actually been playing pretty good ball. It's still not a reason to put that young guy out there. Why? Because we're not trying to ruin him, and we're not quite ready. We're trying to figure some things out, whether that's offensive line, whether that's defense. If nothing else, let us figure that out. Let him practice for 8 weeks, however long. Let him get comfortable, and then we can put him out there. Jacoby Brissett knows there's no real long-term commitment to him. He knows that. But let's just say Jacoby Brissett making $8 million, $7 million a year, man, ain't nobody really tripping for real.
Yeah.
You're still getting good money, and as a player, you appreciate that honesty. Hey, man, look, this is eventually his show. We just need you to place hold for a second and still do your thing. Because why? That still leads to employment for Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett gonna have a job for the next 5 to 8 years. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
Why? Because he can get in there and do a job. But we don't want you to be the guy. We want you to be emergency and help out. Right? The next point of that is, even with myself, man, I lived it with Geno Smith. They put Geno out there way too early. But why? Because we didn't have another quarterback. He was coming in after Mark Sanchez. We was trying to get past that era. Geno wasn't ready. Now, from a talent standpoint, he could do it all. He could make every throw. His arm strength was above average. I wasn't going to say he was a super athlete, but he was good enough to do enough, right? We put him out there in New York media. He was young. It didn't work out, man. What does he do? He goes other places, learn from Eli, learn from some other guys. Look at Geno now. He's a very good quarterback in the NFL, right? A lot of people would take Geno Smith right now, and his pay reflects that. He's been rewarded with contracts, all of that. So I think to the question to start off, I think some of this talent is trying to be realized right now. I think teams with not having the preseasons that they normally have used these spaces to kind of work out some kinks. Let's figure some things out. I think teams are okay at 1-1. Nobody wants to be 0-2, but even the teams like a Baltimore can still rebound. I still believe in Baltimore. I still believe in everything that they're built on. It's just 0-2 just doesn't help you, obviously. But I think the numbers down from a quarterback speak to a lot of different things. I think the talent has been spread around. I think we got a lot of high level DB play. I think the receiver play is high level. Um, but I also think we got high level defensive line play too. So, when you're not playing in the preseason, your offensive line ain't clicking like it normally will be in week 8. It's going to look a certain type of way. And even looking at some numbers, I mean, at the NFL right now, it's 125 yards rushing. I think that was the highest number they've had since some crazy amount of time. So teams trying to figure out, the trench play. Um, and at the end of the day, I think wins are good, but I think a lot of the teams at the top are trying to figure some things out, and they're just gonna let it kind of play out now. I think week 3 to 4, we'll start seeing some things iron out in terms of schematics. I think guys will, even just reading some articles, some younger guys who played a lot in week 1, didn't play a lot of week 2. Some of the conversation was like, "Hey, we're gonna get so and so more minutes." You're just trying to figure out rotations, guys who. And then you got injuries, man. I mean, a team like the Rams already been decimated by injuries.
Yeah.
San Fran going through it a little bit. Spoke a little bit about KC got a big injury at the running back spot. So a lot of that's going to play into it, and I just think teams are just trying to figure out what's going to be the flavor of the year. Every year, man, there's a different flavor to the NFL. I remember the Wildcat year. Everybody running the Wildcat. So they just figuring things out, man. It's not a concern for me. It really isn't. I just wish they had preseason, man. I think if they had preseason, I think the season would kind of start off faster, like we know. But it is what it is.
But for me, when I look at where things are, I look at teams, and the reason why I think the Ravens for me are under pressure is because you're playing in the toughest division, but one of your first 2 losses has already been against Kansas City, the team that you essentially were built to beat.
Okay.
And you and I have had this conversation, and you brought up a point in our conversation that Lamar Jackson, that he may be in a place where he thinks, I just cannot beat Patrick Mahomes. And if
that's what the win-loss column tells you.
Yeah, and again, I think that as we talked about it going when we did our preseason show on the NFL. We talked about Cincinnati, Baltimore, and maybe a couple of the teams. They're built to try to knock off the Chiefs. Damn the regular season and everybody else. They're going to take care of business. They're going to be in the playoffs. But their goal is to knock off Kansas City. And with Kansas City roll into that first week with the same number of preseason games, with the same practices, and they beat you, that has to play in your mind. Because, again, they're not in the same place as anybody else. And so this is about veteran quarterbacks now in the league. But I also think that you made a great point about defenses. Some of the gimmicky stuff that came out during the rule changes in the mid-2000s about defensive play and all those things, I think defensive coordinators are now starting to figure out a way to play tough, solid defenses within the confines of those rules. If you notice in college, when the run-pass option type plays first really hit the scenes, they were gashing defenses. Now I think that coordinators have kind of figured out the reads, the splits, and those sorts of things, and you're not seeing quite as much of it now as you used to. And I think the game is slowly evolving back to what the nature of the game is. You got to be able to run that football. I don't care how many yards you pass for. It doesn't matter what sort of formation you have. You have to be able to get your lineman down in that three-point stance and move some people around to create space for you to run the game, run the ball. Because if you don't, it's going to be a problem. and it's good to see it start to evolve back. But again, you look at KC, they in trouble if they don't find someone in free agency. They could really be in a lot of trouble if they don't fill that gap. Again, when you look at the schedule, and the AFC is, my opinion, is tougher than the NFC this year.
Oh yeah.
To get through. So, and then you talking just to kind of real quick before we jump on to the third quarter. Looking at my Steelers and their quarterback room, I really think Russell Wilson has been the best thing for the Steelers because he is now there to help bring some calm to that Steelers quarterback room. Even though he's not playing, when you have someone there with that championship experience that can now talk to your young quarterback and talk him through, and he doesn't have that pressure to win the game. They still, Mike Tomlin still, he's still apprehensive about commenting on who's going to start. So when you're a young quarterback and you could play, I don't want to say carefree, but nobody is turning to you and say you're going to be the one we're placing the season success on.
Yeah, no, it's I think it's a space, man, where there's a fine line between the franchise is we're hanging on to this guy, and let's just be real, like the Bengals. Joe Burrow brought that franchise out of despair.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, Andy Dalton had a good run, the Ocho Cinco years. They had a good run, but in terms of winning the championship, they only could get so far. And that's when you start as an owner, as we look at things, guys get older in that space and show you they only can get you so far. That's when you have to start making decisions to start all the way over, right? They did that with Joe Burrow. I think, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of going back, but I want to hit on that Lamar Jackson point. I think the Bengals are more equipped to beat Patrick Mahomes than the Ravens are. And the reason why I say that is, for whatever reasons, if you look at the Ravens receiver core, you got Zay Jones, you got Rashad Bateman, you got Mark Andrews at tight end.
Is it Flowers there?
Who?
What's for the Ravens? Flowers, right? He's also
Zay Flowers.
Yeah. Zay Flowers, yeah.
You got Nelson Aguilar. None of them guys scare you versus you're saying Jamar Chase, T. Higgins.
Yeah.
Right? You got two top 15 receivers. Jamar Chase is top 5, right? Those guys scare you with their playmaking ability. Zach Taylor and I don't know who their coordinator is now. I know they just lost Brian Callahan to the Titans. He's a head coach for Tennessee Titans. They know how to stress the Chiefs defensively. And that's just how it is in sports. Some coordinators, hey, I know how to beat him. I know how to stress him. I know we can do our thing, right? Whereas I think the Ravens, man, I don't think they know how to do that. I don't think they are built from a roster standpoint to stress Kansas City's secondary. And we can go team for team. Everybody has, I know I can beat him, and then you got your kryptonite. Every team. I can tell you even for myself, our kryptonite was the Patriots. We could beat them at home. We couldn't beat them up there. One year we beat them up there in the playoffs. It was the best thing ever, right? We found out a little formula, a little recipe. You know what I'm saying? And so, the thing is in a perfect world, I think the Ravens want to avoid the Chiefs at all costs. Like, I think they feel good. I think they feel good against Houston. I think they feel good against Buffalo if that scenario would have happened. And a lot of other teams. But I just don't think they want to really, really see the Chiefs. Same thing, you can say Dallas and San Francisco. They don't want to see San Francisco. Same thing with some other teams here and there. Green Bay has Dallas's numbers. So just every team kind of, hey, we know how to beat them. We know how to beat them in whatever element. We got their number. But I think, overall with quarterback play, I think this year kind of speaks to time. We got to give them some time. I think, like I said, week 6 to 8, I think we're going to start seeing things get in rhythm. And then, like I say, man, the talent base has come out. You kind of got to play to that, man. I mean, you can find running backs anywhere. I think some good offensive linemen have come out. And like I said, I think over the last 5 to 8 years, man, some really good defensive backs have come out. Whether you're talking about Sauce Gardner in New York, Patrick Surtain in Denver, you got my boy, love his game. What's his name? Tall. He played in Seattle. Tall corner. He's like 6'4", running 4.2.
Uh,
Tariq Woolen. Tariq Woolen.
yeah, yeah.
You got Denzel Ward in Cleveland. I mean, you got some real shutdown corners, which, when you start speaking to shutdown, what offensive coordinators do, they just don't throw the ball over there. So now then you start
Playing with
asking
half
yourself,
your field now, or
playing half the
or the
field.
two
So then you
thirds
got to
of it.
ask
Yeah,
yourself as a coordinator, do I even have a legitimate number 2 or 3 receiver? If I ain't got that, do I got a good tight end? So then you start talking about, now I'm exposing your roster.
yeah.
So, overall, like I said, not to belabor the point, I think, over time, the offense will pick up. And, I'll get to the stat of the week, but man, the field goal kickers, man,
Oh
look,
my gosh.
the field goal kickers are showing their whole ass this year, Smitty. Yeah, man, Smitty. I'm talking about they
Yeah.
like, hey, we got Kevin Smith with a 59-yard field goal. He didn't hit 3 of them today. This is 4th one.
They
That's how the
knocking
game's
down.
been going.
Yeah, they bet they.
All of them need to be drug tested after the game. Lord have mercy.
So let's jump into the third quarter. Uh, Pace. The third quarter topic is coaches on the hot seat. I know it's a little bit early, but there are some coaches that have shown within the first 2 or 3 weeks that they're already on the hot seat. I'm gonna go down to the college level, and this is sort of obvious, but Mike Norvell, head coach of the Florida State Seminoles, he is definitely on the hot seat, and they're starting off 0-3. They're just not playing well at all. They don't look like they're on the same page. They were a highly touted defensive line that is just getting gashed week in and week out, regardless of who they play. And you brought in DJ Ongole, and you brought him back, and you invested heavily in the transfer portal. Granted, you lost a lot of guys, but again, you invested in being able to reload, and you sold the media and your fans a lot of tickets, and just on your team coming back. You sued the the ACC. So you did all of these things, but now you're coming out 0-3, and it's just not looking good at all. You're not going to get to the playoffs at this point. You're probably not even going to play for the ACC championship because you've already lost 2 ACC games within your conference.
They're looking like they might not even be bowl eligible.
And that's what I'm saying. He looks like he may be tinkering, if he hasn't already, tinkering on losing that locker room. The only thing that's saving him right now, my opinion is I think Florida State may be cash strapped, but if they get rid of him, they owe this man $65 million. They will owe him $65 million to walk away. That's my coach, I think, is on the hot seat. Maybe they'll let him survive, but I also think they'll figure out a way to get him out of there. Maybe piece out that $65 million so it's not one big check. He may have already lost that locker room because you can't get that Florida State. We've played against them. That Florida State vibe is not like anywhere else. They have high expectations of success, and especially in a year where some people thought Clemson was down, and they have a shot to get back, and it's supposed to be a revenge year where they get in the playoffs. The year they expand the playoffs, you start off 0-3. So I have to go with Mike Norvell as my coach that is on the hottest seat in America.
Well, I get my two cents with Florida State, man. They just look lost, man. I mean, and we're not talking about, people are down on Billy Napier at Florida, and he's not gonna make it. I mean, but his is kind of the culmination of, a couple years have been trash, and I don't think the fan base wanted him. So, when the fan base don't want you, you're second, third guy on the list. You already kind of doomed from the start, unless you just come out like gangbusters and prove them wrong.
Yeah.
And it's happened, but I think at a place like Florida is tough. But even his schedule, I think if you're realistic, you're kind of like, man, Miami, Texas, and okay, those 2 tough teams. You know what I'm saying? You're mad, but to lose to Georgia Tech, Boston College, to get dogged by not Texas A&M, who they just played, Memphis. Not even get dogged, but to lose to Memphis.
Yeah.
But in a team that you paid $1.3 million to come play you. So not only
Exactly.
did you lose, but you had to pay him to come get your ass kicked.
Yep.
But when you watch the guy on the sideline, he looks like just a random person standing on the sideline. Like nothing speaks to like that's our coach. Nothing speaks to that.
Yeah.
And I think he got lucky last year, last 2 years with Jordan Travis. I mean, even like, you know, I can't say I was a huge Jordan Travis fan because I'm not a Florida State fan. Currently, I used to like him back in the day. But really, to look at the young kid's body of work, I mean, I respect it because he really kind of did a lot of it on his own with his play. But
Yeah.
Norvell, man, it's. I think from the jump, man, and his struggles, I don't think it was a good match with the ACC and Florida State. And I think that it's going to get worse before it gets better. I think DJ was the worst pick for both sides. To me, he should have just stayed on the West Coast. I think the pressure of the South, even at Clemson, I don't think he was ready for what is required of top level programs. But the last part I'll say about the guy outside of just his presence is I think he's probably the worst talent evaluator in big time college football because none of his portal transfers have really hit outside of Keon Coleman.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple other guys, but I say Keon Coleman's probably the biggest name who really made a difference. You paying these money for these guys, and then you took the worst way out instead of to build it. In a talent rich state now, in a talent rich state with a program that has a name that will stand the test of time, you weren't able to really build that foundation up in the high school ranks. You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
I don't care how much money you have. If you go look at Ohio State, Oregon, Bama, though a lot of those guys are guys they recruited from high school. They'll dibble and dabble here and there, but best believe we got a strong foothold on the West Coast in Oregon, nationally. Ohio State, we can go anywhere and get who we want. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think he's ever had that ability to walk into any high school and say, hey, we want you. Give us a chance. I think whatever his message is, whatever, whether it's facility based or whatever, I just don't think he's been able to sell kids. I really don't. And so,
Yeah.
you see Alabama got a freshman that's got, I think he got 11 catches, like 300 yards received, and he's got like 5 touchdowns. Home based kid from Alabama. You can go down the line of some of these programs. We're going to hold down our region first. And then if we need to get in the portal, we can do that.
Yeah.
I don't think he lasts. I think especially if they lose to Miami in a bad way, which is turning that
Which
way.
is coming. That's what I'm saying.
Clemson might be a bad loss. I don't think these people can stomach that, man. I mean, you
Yeah.
watched the Memphis game. It wasn't nobody in the stadium the last part of the game.
But a $65 million check, that's a huge check to cut
They'll come up with
get
it,
him
man.
out of. So
They'll find a way.
who's your coach on the hot seat?
I would probably say at the top of the list is Mike McCarthy in the NFL. I don't. Speaking to when I was talking about Jerry Jones, I think Jerry purposely ain't spinning. I think he purposely is trying his best to undercut Mike McCarthy because he understands I got a quarterback, got a top receiver, got a top defensive player. You got Stephon Diggs at corner. Like he got the players. And I think, even in the offseason, last offseason, there was a lot of rumblings about him and Bill Belichick and his love for him. So
And Belichick says he wants to get back into it.
So you got there. If I were him, if I were Jerry Jones, I would be in contact with what's it, Slowick, who was the offensive coordinator in Houston. He's I
think so.
I think it's Bobby Slowick.
Yeah.
Young guy. He's been instrumental in getting CJ Stroud and that offense up and going. You just paid a quarterback top money, and you make it your business to get a top level defensive coordinator. That's the route I would go because offense is what's trending now. And then my second place guy is Brian Daboll with the Giants. I think he's in a lose-lose situation. I think the roster's trash. He actually was a quarterback coach when I first got to New York, man. I like Dave Ball. He's a good dude. But I just, sometimes coaches, man, they just get in these situations where you can't. There's nothing you can do.
That's what I'm saying. When you're not getting, when you trade away when you let your one of the best running backs walk away, you're now coaching a team with you got a quarterback that still hasn't proven himself, need more time to develop. Your coordinators obviously aren't working well to put them in good situations. And sometimes I think management will bring in a coach knowing that, the roster ain't shit. But we're going to bring this guy anyway because we got to field the team. And we can't tank. So we're going to bring somebody in, make them be a sacrificial lamb, and make sure they land softly, somewhere else. So I think I agree with you. I think he may – because, them New York fans, they don't take no shit from nobody. So he may not finish the season off, man.
Some of the only people that come ready to the game ready to boo, man. But I ain't gonna lie, man. Like, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, man. I love my time in New York and my Jets fans. They gonna let you know when you ain't playing well. Like, oh shit, we stinking it up. Huh? Let's get right. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
but
that
no,
media.
I agree, man. It's an ethical way to tank. It's like, hey, instead of just, Brian Flores came out with that a couple years ago.
He talked about it.
And so, you look at the Browns. They were shitty for a long. Lions. Eventually, you're gonna stack so much talent up from being shitty that eventually you'll be good. You just got to get coaching there to get y'all to believe that y'all ain't shitty. You know what I'm saying? But, no, man. It's it'll be interesting, man. I think I always speak to when you start talking about coaching hires. To me, I don't care what level you are. You got to go to where they're winning at. And where they win, and they got a formula, and you got to find some people who can lead men and find a way if it's a good fit. Because I think, I was having a conversation with a guy today, and he was talking about his Eagles, and man, what you think about Belichick? And I was like, you can't doubt the man's success throughout the years, but I don't know if his message would reach kids these days. And I'm saying kids because I'm old and they're younger than me. But young men, I don't know if that message resonates, that hard-nosed, tough love message. I think these guys need a lot more nurturing and telling them, man, you're good, you're okay, you're great. I don't know if he's got that in him, and especially in that market.
But if you look at a lot of his teams, especially when he had that stretch run with the Patriots, he really brought in a lot of veterans. Very rarely did he go out and look for young players to come and fill those spots. Yeah, you had some exceptions, but if you go back through that roster over those years of that Super Bowl run, he would rather sign a veteran that understood certain things and that was willing to take the bullshit because they wanted to win. They needed that win, that Super Bowl win on their resume. And so I think there's a place for Belichick. It's just he's got to have an organization and an owner that pretty much stays the fuck out of his way.
Yeah.
And I think that more owners will have to do that. I think
Jerry Jones.
Exactly. So before we get out of here, man, we're going to jump into this fourth quarter to end the show. We're going to go with our stat of the week. I'm going to start off. My stat of the week is 0. 0. That's the total number of wins that the Ravens have at this point, and they are desperate to win. I wasn't expecting them to start off this way. When you look at what they invested in the offseason, they made sure Lamar got paid. They brought in Derrick Henry for the running game. They made all of these changes, and I think it was to really beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And so far at this point, when you start off like that and now you got to go in and you got to play a Cowboys team, and you don't want to – it's not a good look when it's the third week of the season and you're already in desperation mode. So I think that my stat of the week is 0 because I'm really shocked that at this point they're undefeated. And as you talked about in your career, you come across those teams that you just struggle to beat. And to have come in the first game of the season, you struggled to knock off the Kansas City Chiefs, the team that you were designed to beat. And when Lamar had a chance to win the game, with an inaccurate throw to Flowers, and then the one people say it was just okay. It was 1 inch. It was the toe. They would have won, but they didn't. It goes into the loss column, and that mentally starts to play with you of can we really knock off Kansas City? And so I'm just shocked that they're starting off. So that's my stat of the week is 0 as the Baltimore Ravens come in and they haven't gotten a win yet, and now they find themselves in a desperate situation. Not necessarily to say they're playoff hopes. I think they're still going to get to the playoffs, make a good run. But now this is about the psychology of your team. Because if your team goes into the playoffs, especially coming out of AFC, where I think every week is going to be a battle, and your team isn't confident enough to really get it over the hump, it could be a problem.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I'm right there with you, man. I think even with the despair to win a game, the Ravens got to really hope they stay healthy.
Yeah,
That's the last thing they want to be is mess
yeah,
around, be 2-4, 3-5, and then you start having a rash of injuries, and then it just starts spiraling from there. So I really hope the health stays good there, and I do. I think they'll find a way to rebound, and even with the loss last week against the Raiders, they had a 10-point lead, so it's not like they were in the Chiefs game. They're not far off. I'll say it that way. Versus you look at the Cowboys, you beat a Deshaun Watson team who wasn't playing well week 1. You get your ass kicked week 2, and you're like, I don't know what the hell week 3 going. I think it's a
yeah,
little different from Baltimore. But my
yeah.
stat of the
Go
week
ahead.
was there has been 141 field goals made in 2 weeks versus 129 touchdowns in
Yeah,
2 weeks. And from watching games, I think teams are really struggling in the red zone, man. Really, really struggling in the red zone. And some of that speaks to I don't think the teams have found the flavor of the year in terms of how to score in the red zone. Because it's like I spoke to earlier, it's always whether it's a route, whether it's a play, a formation, a personnel group, and to throw people off that people can we can use that as a base. We can kind of expound upon that in whatever way teams want to do it. But and on the flip side, I mean, red zone defense has been amazing, man. Teams have been getting in the 30s at high, low red zone and been lights out. So, I think, it just really depends on what side of the coin you sit on, whether you're an offensive guy or defensive guy. I think you kind of you doctor it up however you want to, but I mean, you literally watch any game, and like I spoke to earlier, man, the field goal kickers. I mean, there probably is at least 10 teams right now in the NFL. The field goal kicker is the team MVP today. If the season ended,
today,
he's the
yeah,
MVP of this whole team.
yeah,
And I mean, we're not talking about 30-yard. I mean, guys been making 50 plus. And this has been. I think the Texans kicker hit 3 field goals over 50 yards in one game. So, yeah, kudos to the kickers and whatever they've been doing in the offseason. It seems like they all done got together and got
shout
all
out
this
to the
shit.
kickers. Shout out to the cats that come to practice for 20 minutes.
Man, but no, I think it kind of just goes back to some of my earlier points, man. Today's football players, some of them don't understand what preseason games were kind of built on. And especially like if you were like an experienced team that was playoffs year before, year 2, year 3 years in a row before, you use the preseason and say, all right, hey, we're gonna play our starters week 2 into the second half. We really, really hope we get a 2-minute drill before halftime on either side of the ball.
Yeah,
Why? Because hey, let's run some stuff we've been working on, work some guys in. Same thing in the red zone. Hey, and I'm saying this because coaches will come out and say this. Hey, man, we really want to be good in the red zone this week. We got some stuff we've been working on. Whether it's all during the week, we've been highlighting red zone periods in practice, whatever the case might be. We might have added a guy, a big tight end, whatever. It might be all different type of scenarios. But I just think when you take those things away, and don't get me wrong, they got their joint practices, but you can't simulate a game in practice. Nobody's
yeah.
going game speed in practice ever.
But I also think it's something that you touched on earlier was that typically it takes the offense a little bit longer to click. It takes them a while longer into the season to click before the defense clicks in. The defense is clicking already, and that's why you're seeing the longer field goals. But I would be interested to see what is that field goal rate like around week 8. After some teams have been able to work out some kinks in the offense, the coordinators have spent some time looking at defenses to see what adjustments are being made, and can the coordinators get creative, because you're going to have to start getting creative, because at 3-4 weeks of film that teams are going to have, they're going to start figuring out your tendencies, and that's when you start getting into your division and you got to play everybody twice. So I think you're going to see more creativity on offense, which hopefully will result in more points. But I also think it's residue from not paying running backs what they should get and surrounding schematically your players with a run game when they can't eke out those third and short yards, and you're constantly throwing the ball, so on and so forth. I think that's a part of it. So I think, to something you said earlier, the offenses are starting to click. But right now it's good to see that those field goal kickers have stepped up and put up points, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Giants scored 3 touchdowns and still lost to a team because they had all field goals.
They kicked 7 field goals.
7
field goals.
7 field goals to
But
beat a team that scored 3 touchdowns.
I don't have any stats on this, but I would be interested to see how the new kickoff is playing into that statistically. Because the reason why I say that is because there's a number of different ways. Obviously, the best scenario is you got an electric kickoff returner that can get you to the 30 the majority of the times, right?
Yeah.
Every now and then he's getting a longer return. Maybe he takes it to the house. That's best case scenario. But even within that, you got penalties that can get you more yardage, can start you out, get you, and I just think, just even the kickoff in general it just adds a certain energy to the game in general. And I'm not saying like, oh, they don't have kickoff and that's eliminating, an extra 21 points. No, but I do think that, if and then this is, probably the best returner that we've seen the last 20, 30 years. If you got a Devin Hester and you're for Chicago, you're doing us a disservice by not letting him return the ball in a normal fashion. You are. And there's been a number of different guys who good returners, and they've made great money and careers off of that. You basically have negated that, with this new format. But I'm not saying that it's a scenario where that's definitely something to point at.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be interesting if somebody did a study to see, like, man, no, that's kind of, it's taking energy away from us, or no, we got a guy who can actually do some stuff back there. We're not able to utilize that, but
that's where your special teams coach has got to be. That's where you got to charge that special teams coach to be creative. Yeah. What can we do with this? And again, I think with the rule change, with every rule change, it's going to take a few weeks, if not a couple of seasons, to start adjusting to, okay, how do we take advantage of this? And I think a lot of special team coaches are being challenged right now. And you're going to start seeing some things differently. Hell, remember how we used to line up to block the punt? That shit has even changed. Yeah. So I think that once people understand the rule and head coaches start challenging special team coaches, then I think you're going to start seeing those kickoff returns get a little bit more exciting. Well, Pace, another great show. We got a special guest that's going to come and join us next week. We're gonna have a long conversation with financial guru Pi Cherasika. He's going to talk some of this private equity money going into pro sports, and we're going to chop it up about the impact on potentially the impact on college sports being funded by private equity funds, man. So looking forward to it, Pace.
Yeah, man, that'd be a great one, bro.
Let's see.